They weren't just some street clique pushing weight on corners. The Black Disciples built an empire straight out of Chicago's South Side, where gang signs weren't just thrown up, they were sacred. From the days of King David to the deadly rise of Mickey Bull, this set moved like an army. They ran towers, stacked millions off dope, and held meetings like church. Kids got blessed into the nation with treys on the head, then sent out to do nation work. BD strongholds like the Robert Taylor homes and the castle turned into war zones. Enemies? Vice Lords, Stones, Cobras, even the gangster disciples when things split. And when Mickey Bull got hit, Englewood lit up like a war movie. From project hallways to prison yards, the BDs weren't just surviving, they were controlling. This is the real story of the Black Disciples, not the watered down version, the one that made Chicago bleed. How the Black Disciples took over. Back in 1958, in the heart of Chicago's South Side, a group of teenagers came together. These weren't just any kids, they came from Hyde Park, Englewood, and Kenwood, neighborhoods where survival wasn't easy. Together, they formed the Devil's Disciples. Some of the earliest names in this gang included David Barksdale, Richard Strong, Mingo Shred, Prince Oldtimer, Kilroy, Leonard Longstreet, and Nightwalker. But it was David Barksdale, later known on the streets as King David, who quickly took control. By 1961, he was calling the shots. He set up leaders over different areas and started building something much bigger than just a street gang. Barksdale wasn't just trying to run his own crew. He wanted to bring all the small gangs under one flag. He began pulling in more sets, expanding his influence. By 1966, he renamed the organization the Black Disciples Nation. That move changed the game. Membership started growing fast. His plan was working. The numbers were getting strong. Thousands were joining. But with every step forward came new enemies. In 1969, something unexpected happened. Larry Hoover, leader of the rival Gangster Disciples, reached out. Instead of going to war, the two decided to merge their forces. This created the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. The streets were buzzing. Two of the most feared names had joined forces, but the peace didn't last long. Hoover got locked up for murder not long after, and Barksdale was left in charge again. That gave him more power, but also more pressure. Then came 1974. Barksdale died from kidney problems that started years earlier after he was shot. He was only 27. With their king gone, the gang fell into chaos. The once unified crew split. On one side, you had the Black Disciples. On the other, the Black Gangster Disciples. And from that moment, the streets of Chicago were never the same again. One man stepped up to lead the Black Disciples after King David's death. His name was Mickey Bull. He actually made peace with the Gangster Disciples for a short time, but peace in the gang world never lasts. In August 1991, Mickey Bull was killed by the GDs. That murder sparked an all-out war. Just days later, the Black Disciples killed 3 GD members in retaliation. From 1991 to 1994, the violence between the two crews reached a whole new level. Bodies were dropping. Blood was everywhere. It took a new leader, Marvel Thompson, to step in and calm things down. But just when things seemed to settle, a tragedy made the gang world go viral, the story of Yummy. His real name was Robert Sandifer, but everyone on the block knew him as Yummy. He was only 11 years old, but he was already deep in the game, small, skinny, and addicted to cookies. That's how he got the nickname. Yummy wasn't just hanging around the gang. He was a full Black disciple, repping a set called the 8 Balls, based on 108th Street. In late August 1994, Yummy was handed a 9mm pistol by his BD chief. His mission, shoot at some GDs. But things went wrong, real wrong. Yummy opened fire and accidentally killed a 14-year-old girl named Shavon Dean, an innocent bystander with no ties to the streets. The city was shocked. Chicago turned its eyes to the gangs. The news exploded. Suddenly everyone was talking about the Black Disciples. Yummy went into hiding, back with his BD crew, but instead of protecting him, the gang saw him as a liability. They sent 2 teenage BD members, Derek and Craig Hardaway, to handle it. They picked Yummy up, took him to an underpass, and shot him twice in the back of the head. That was it. The gang had just killed an 11-year-old member to cover their tracks, and the world took notice. Headlines everywhere, talk shows, news specials. It exposed how deep gangs were willing to go, even against their own. By that time, the Black Disciples were running over 300 sets, or what they called dynasties. Each dynasty had around 30 to 40 members. The structure wasn't random. It ran like a military mixed with religion. At the bottom were the soldiers, the young ones doing the dirty work. But above them were the real players. The first Demetrius, the assistant co-minister, and the minister. Those were the top ranks in each set. And then there was the crowned king, Jerome Freeman, known in the streets as King Shorty. Even though King David was gone, all sets still worshipped his legacy. His name was sacred. His leadership style became gospel. Each dynasty also had rotating roles. You had your chief of violations, chief of security, and assistant chief of security. These weren't paid roles, but the gang treated them seriously. If someone messed up, they didn't just get a slap on the wrist. Discipline was real and violent. Members who broke rules faced violations. These weren't warnings, they were beatdowns. A small violation might be a 30-second chest punch session where the member is held with his arms behind his back while others punch him in the chest. That could happen if someone didn't show up at a meeting or failed to pay dues. But if a member disrespected a leader, came up short on drug money, or lost a stash, the punishment was worse. It could be a 5-minute beating. And in extreme cases, like with Yummy, the punishment was death. The message was clear. No one was untouchable. But the gang wasn't just about drugs and beatdowns. They had a social side too. House parties were a big deal for the BDs. Anyone could come, even non-members, as long as they paid the fee. It was a place to chill, smoke, drink, and bond. But it was also a place where status mattered. Rank came with respect. Soldiers watched what they said. One wrong word, one slip of the tongue, and it could lead to a violation. These parties were also used to celebrate leaders' birthdays. Cakes decorated with gang symbols like the 6-pointed Star of David and the 3 logo were common. Photos were taken, memories made, power displayed. The BD rules didn't stop at parties or corners. They controlled every move. Even female members, though fewer in number, had their own space. Up to 30% of some sets were women. They weren't just girlfriends. They sold drugs, enforced rules, and even carried out violations. They had their own group, the Daughters of the Universal Star. They held meetings, picked leaders, and handled business like the men. But rising to the top, that was rare. Respect was earned, but power stayed mostly with the men. Still, inside the BD world, women weren't safe either. Like one informant said, they'll mislead you. They sell drugs, they kill, they give violations. That was the reality. The streets didn't care about gender, only loyalty. So when people talk about the Black Disciples, they're not just talking about a gang, they're talking about a machine, a structure that ran on fear, loyalty, and control. From the dusty streets of 108th to the prison cells where orders were still given, the BD name carried weight. From King David to King Shorty, the leadership changed, but the code stayed the same. And for anyone who broke it, the punishment was always waiting. The Black Disciples didn't just run blocks, they ran lives. They raised soldiers, they ruled neighborhoods, and they did it by any means necessary. In 1981, everything changed for the Black Disciples. Mickey Bull got out of prison and stepped into a high-ranking position known as Bishop. Around that same time, Jerome Freeman, also known as Shorty, was released. But the real shift came when Mickey Johnson, seen by many as a prophet, dropped a message that shook the streets. He told all disciples that the old name Black Gangster Disciples Nation was dead. From now on, they were just Black Disciples. That move split the streets. Some disciples stayed loyal to the old BGD banner and became Black Gangster Disciples, while others followed Mickey and repped the BD name only. That split wasn't all bad at first. In fact, it brought a calm. BDs and BGDs were still under the folk nation, so they had rules keeping them somewhat close. Mickey even taught the BDs a new hand sign, the Gates, which meant throwing up 3 fingers. In the Stateway Gardens, Mickey made sure BD influence stayed strong. He even flipped most of the Dell Vikings and kept a chunk of the buildings from going BGD. Across the city, the 1981 prophecies laid out which hoods were BD and which flipped BGD. Areas like Armour Square, Auburn Gresham, Burnside, and Chatham leaned heavy BGD. But places like Greater Grand Crossing, Roseland, and Englewood had strong BD roots too. Englewood especially became one of the biggest BD zones. Other areas, like Oakland and Riverdale, were split right down the middle. Even the near west side had pieces going BD, especially on the streets outside the Rockwell Gardens. By 1982, BDs made bold moves. Mickey Bull and his crew snatched up buildings from the Mickey Cobras near 45th and State. The 4555 and 4525 buildings had been MC territory since 1962, but no more. Bull pushed the Cobras down to the Hole, their last stronghold. That same year, a civil war sparked inside the BDs. Dirk Ackland came out of prison and wasn't happy with Jerome Freeman's power, so he started his own BD crew, the Asiatic Apostles. While BDs were at each other's throats, BGDs stayed out of it. That calmed BD-BGD tension for a while. Eventually, Dirk's crew folded back into the main BD family by 1983 or 1984. Then in 1984, Mickey Bull got a new title, Minister. That gave him a dynasty, meaning he ran an entire region. His territory, the whole south side of Chicago, from Bronzeville to the Wild Hundreds, that was all Mickey's. He ran daily ops out of the Robert Taylor homes and held meetings outside the 4950 building. He even lived at 4950 Federal in apartment 1505 with Brenda Ware. When Mickey walked the streets, he had a signature whistle. And when BDs heard it, you dropped whatever you were doing. Sick, busy, sleeping, it didn't matter. If Mickey whistled, you showed up. During the early and mid-1980s, BDs and BGDs were solid. They even teamed up against rivals like the Vice Lords, Black P. Stones, and Mickey Cobras. But when crack hit hard in the late 80s, all that peace crumbled, especially in Englewood. That hood had been BD turf forever, and now BGDs wanted in on the crack money. BGDs were bigger and felt entitled as the top folk nation set, but BDs weren't about to let anyone muscle in. Tension boiled over. By 1989, it got real. Jerome Freeman caught 28 years for a drug case. After that, chaos hit the streets. In the summer of 1991, GDs were getting loud, and even though there wasn't full-on war yet, Mickey Bull was keeping peace. Still, some GDs didn't like Mickey's grip and planned to take him out. Nobody thought they'd really do it. Mickey was feared and respected. But in August 1991, they got him. GDs murdered Mickey Bull, and that was it. BDs went wild. On August 7th, Englewood turned into a war zone. That day, a BD named Tojo pulled up at 66th and Peoria, threw up the BD sign, and got shot at by some GDs. He drove off and said he'd be back. That night, a red and white taxi and a red LeBaron rolled up. Gunshots lit up the corner. One GD died, two got hit. Later that same night at 71st and Low, 3 more GDs got shot, 2 died, and the hit came from that same stolen taxi cab. A gang hit from a taxi? That's legendary. From 1991 to 1994, the South Side was in flames. Nobody was safe. GDs and BDs were going at it non-stop. In 1994, things chilled briefly when Marvel Thompson stepped in, but peace didn't last. That year, the split became official. BGDs renamed themselves simply Gangster Disciples. The war was now permanent. Even with the heat, BDs were gaining numbers. Many young GDs flipped to BD because BDs charged less tax on drug money. That lower nation tax pulled in fresh recruits like Robert Yummy Sandifer. Yummy was only 11 but already stealing cars and robbing homes. Too young for juvie, too violent for foster care, the BDs used him to kill rival GDs. In August 1994, he opened fire with a 9mm, trying to hit GDs, but killed 14-year-old Siobhan Dean by mistake. The public flipped out, afraid he'd snitch. The BDs had his own people, his 14 and 16-year-old brothers, kill him execution style. Shot him in the back of the head under a viaduct. Both were arrested, and the BD name stayed in headlines for years. By 1996, more blood spilled. GD Governor Big Chuck Dorsey, got killed. That could have kicked off more war, especially at 38th and Cottage Grove, where both GDs and BDs held ground. A meeting was held and Rimrod, a BD, threw down the pitchfork in disrespect. Still, no violence came from it. Instead, more GDs flipped BD in those projects. BD numbers grew stronger, but Rimrod and other high-ranking BDs were killed not long after. Through the late 90s and 2000s, the Black Disciples kept expanding. They made a name for themselves in public housing wars. At both Robert Taylor and Stateway Gardens, it was all-out war between GDs and BDs. No other gang could compete. Both had deep roots in those towers, and when gunfire rang out, it was usually BD versus GD. The violence made young kids want to join, and the BDs grew to over 6,000 members. One of the craziest BD strongholds was the Randolph Tower at 6217 S Calumet, known as the Castle. In 1991, BDs took over this 16-story high-rise and built a drug empire. At its peak, they pulled in $45,000 to $300,000 a day, pushing crack and heroin. Marvel Thompson ran the show. Guards with automatic weapons and shotguns checked everyone at the door. Snipers sat on the roof, watching through night vision scopes. An undercover cop once got made and shot trying to run. He lived, but the message was clear. Don't mess with the castle. They even hijacked a Christian radio frequency, 104.7 WCFL, and used it to play gangster rap or communicate threats. The suburban station was shocked when their clean broadcast turned into raw street music near Midway Airport. By 2004, the cops had enough. A massive raid brought down the tower, and the buildings were demolished to stop the madness. Still, BDs didn't slow down. As the Robert Taylor homes came down, they moved into new blocks from 43rd to 49th and State. They even took over the 5th Ward and Newtown from the GDs in the 2000s. In 2005, Jerome Freeman was finally released after 16 years behind bars. 6 years later, in 2011, he passed away at age 60 from health issues. And even though BDs pushed drugs, they were seen by some locals as protectors. They sold marijuana, coke, and heroin and treated local users with respect. In return, the community turned a blind eye or even felt safe around them. Gunshots must have been outsiders. Locals told themselves the BDs were just defending the hood. Behind closed doors, the BD world was deep. They held meetings in garages, porches, and abandoned houses. Dues were $5 per member. But meetings came with pressure. Mess up a prayer and you'd catch a violation. Their literature was sacred like religion. Their structure felt cult-like with ministers, prayers, and initiations. New kids didn't need to commit violence to join. Instead, they'd memorize the prayer. Then members would place the BD hand sign, the treys, on their heads like a blessing. That's it. You were in. You did your nation work, which meant selling dope. Most recruits were just 12. They had 6 years before they could earn rank if they lived that long. And the BDs weren't just in Chicago. They branched out. Milwaukee was a major BD target in the 80s. Like one member said, Chicago is all taken. Milwaukee, you get your own strip, your own spot. You run that. It was like opening a McDonald's. But to do it, you needed the okay from Stateville Prison. No word from the top, no move. The gang's reach grew, but so did the heat. In 1998, federal agents went after BD leaders. By 1999, 21 BDs were indicted for drug charges. Informants like Robert Allen Jr. and Charles Jackson flipped and snitched. Allen testified against 16 of the 21, cutting a life sentence down to 20 years. That bust hit the gang hard, but it didn't stop them. The Black Disciples are a legend in the world of Chicago gangs. From Mickey Bull to the Castle to the Milwaukee expansion, they built an empire that left a deep mark on the streets, and they're still standing. The fall of murder. On Chicago's South Side, the streets of Englewood have seen a lot. Gunshots at night, corners taken over by hustlers, and young men rising up through the ranks of some of the city's most feared gangs. But what happened in this recent federal crackdown was something nobody on the block expected. The feds weren't just taking out soldiers. They were aiming straight for the shot callers, those running the show behind the scenes. And at the center of it all was a man who goes by the name Murder. Darnell McMiller, 34 years old, wasn't just any gang member. According to the feds, he was the top dog, the current head of the Black Disciples, one of the most dangerous and well-known gangs in Chicago. The Black Disciples ain't just some local crew hustling on one block. They're a national street gang with deep roots all over Chicago and even beyond. But in Englewood, that's their stronghold. That's where the work goes down. And when the feds hit them, they hit hard. Over 23 people were taken down in one massive operation. It wasn't overnight. This thing took years to build. It was run by the FBI and CPD with heavy backup from ATF, DEA, IRS criminal investigators, and even help from the U.S. Attorney's Office up in Wisconsin. They weren't playing. They were running deep surveillance, flipping people, using wiretaps, and even having informants wear wires while buying dope and guns from these guys. That's how they caught McMiller and others moving big weight. Drugs like heroin, fentanyl-laced heroin, crack cocaine, cocaine by the kilo, even MDMA pills. We're talking more than 13 kilos of cocaine found alone, plus over a kilo of heroin and another stash with fentanyl. The kind of drugs that don't just mess people up, they kill them. One bad hit and it's lights out. And the Black Disciples were deep in that game. The feds also seized 24 firearms, pistols, rifles, even shotguns. These weren't just for show. These were being passed around to keep territory locked down and to scare off rivals or snitches. According to the charges, some of the guys caught already had felony convictions and weren't even supposed to have a gun in their hands. That didn't stop them. People like Clarence January, also known as a leader in the BD's Dog Pound set, were out here allegedly pushing heat and dope like it was just another day on the grind. But here's the thing, McMiller wasn't working alone. That's where it gets messy. He's accused of teaming up with Charles Knight, a high-level member of the rival gangster disciples. Yeah, you heard that right. BDs and GDs are usually at war, but when money's involved, lines get blurred. In this case, Knight allegedly supplied Murder's crew with dope. Specifically, they're charged for selling heroin laced with fentanyl back in September 2019. That transaction went down in the 7000 block of South Low Avenue, right in the heart of Englewood. Then there's Kenneth Brown, 59 years old, another old head who allegedly kept the supply line running. He's accused of working with Terrence Morris, another BD member, to push heroin in March of that same year. The feds searched a storage unit tied to Brown and hit the jackpot. 13 sealed bricks of cocaine. That's major weight, and it wasn't just the drugs. In the summer of 2019, Clarence January was allegedly caught trafficking 3 handguns. The guy had already been convicted of a felony gun charge in Cook County, so legally, he couldn't touch a firearm. But on the streets, that rule don't mean a thing. Feds say January wasn't the only one breaking that law. Several other convicted felons were also caught with firearms. These weren't random guns, they were being handed out to gang members. Tools of the trade, the streets were hot, and the Black Disciples were deep in it. Among the others arrested were names that had been around for years. Guys like Alonzo Brooks, Frederick Stewart, Tony Redding, and Ramont Austin, veterans of the game, all connected to pushing weight on Chicago's South Side. Some of them, like Barry Mickiel and Franklin Redding, were tied to the same network, helping the BDs distribute drugs across different corners and neighborhoods. Then there were younger names too, like Travis Washington, only 24 years old, who was caught up on a firearm charge. That shows you this gang ain't just about the old heads. They recruit young blood early, start them with small runs, give them a piece of the profit, and before long, they're deep in the nation. Even financial crimes were part of the picture. John Ector, 47, of Chicago, wasn't moving bricks or guns. He got hit with a bank fraud charge. Because when you run a big operation like this, it's not just about what happens on the street. You need ways to clean that dirty money. That's where bank fraud comes in. This whole thing was part of something bigger, Operation Legend. Now, Operation Legend isn't about flooding neighborhoods with troops. It's not a war zone style invasion. According to DEA Special Agent Bob Bell, the goal is simple. Go after the worst of the worst, the real shooters, the real movers, the people who are flooding streets with dope and leaving bodies behind. As he said, we will thoughtfully and strategically target violent offenders whose criminal behavior poses danger to the residents of Chicago. Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown didn't hold back either. This is a big win, he said, for our team and for the people of the South Side. And when you see what the feds pulled off, it's clear why they're celebrating. Over 50 different illegal deals were recorded during the investigation, many caught on hidden cameras by informants. That's hard evidence. Stuff that's tough to beat in court. But as U.S. Attorney John Lausch pointed out, the real win won't be in how many people they arrest. It'll be in whether the shootings and murders start to drop. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. Saving lives, keeping kids off corners, giving neighborhoods a shot at peace. And yet, you can't ignore the power these gangs have. The Black Disciples have history. They've got hierarchy, rules, hand signs, even their own structure of leadership. And while this bust dealt a serious blow, there's always someone ready to move up in the ranks when a shot caller falls. That's the reality of gang life in Chicago. Still, for now, the streets of Englewood are just a little quieter, but for how long? Inside the Black Disciples criminal empire. This gang ain't just some wild crew out here acting reckless. The Black Disciples move with order, rules, and money on their mind. Drug dealing, that's the core hustle. It's what they call nation work. And when you're putting in nation work, you're out there pushing drugs for your set. Get your hands on 10 bags of weed, and you already know. 7 of those bags, that money goes straight back to your BD leader. Only 3 are yours to keep. It's business. The kind of business that keeps the upper ranks living good while the young ones take the risks. Every BD member said it the same way. Selling drugs ain't just something they do. It's what the gang is built on. This is how the grown leaders stay clean while the young soldiers take the fall. The rules, all designed to protect the top dogs from going down. That's why silence is law. But BDs don't stop at drugs. They got something else bringing in stacks. Gambling, big-time high-stakes gambling. Crap games with 30 or 40 people all throwing down cash. And these ain't quiet events. They're guarded like Fort Knox. Guns everywhere, security tight. Cause robbers like Durkee used to hit these games trying to steal work money. They don't just use dice games to flex. Dog fights? Yeah, those too. Before 2 dogs tear each other up, some handler might throw a live cat into the ring just to get the crowd hyped. Sick, but real. These events happen in trap spots, soundproofed apartments, abandoned houses, and even open lots. These spots are also used for meetings and breaking down drugs. They're called safe houses, but they're anything but safe. And when it comes to showing love for the nation, the hand signs are serious. You might see a BD throw up what looks like a Boy Scout sign, sign, but don't get it twisted. That's the tray. 3 fingers up, little finger and thumb tucked. It stands for three, one of their strongest symbols. Sometimes they throw fists too, right fist over left, knuckles out, repping their rank. Tattoos, older BDs and hardcore young ones wear them with pride. Most common is the 6-pointed Star of David with the 3 or letters like BDN or BD, but don't expect kids to walk around marked up. Young members usually stay clean-skinned so their parents won't catch on. Some parents even pretend they don't know, and when their sons get killed, they say, "I didn't know he was in a gang," but everyone else knew. Now let's talk about the man they follow. King Shorty, also called the Crowned King. One of his drug suppliers flipped and shared everything. He said, "I know Shorty Freeman. Drugs is his livelihood. Shorty used to cop 10 to 50 keys of coke a month and always paid his debts. He moved smart, careful, and surrounded himself with a tight crew. One of them even lived with him. They kept eyes on everything. Shorty stayed at a house on 51st and Morgan, not far from Don Durkee's place." Another BD boss who tried messing with Shorty's moves but never got the upper hand. Even though the BDs weren't as organized as the GDs, Shorty had a stronger bond with his people. One of his former soldiers who did time with him said, "Shorty treated me with respect. He's quiet, secretive, but always about business. Shorty didn't just run the streets, he ran prison too. In Stateville, he walked like a king. Fancy clothes, expensive jewelry, and real cash on him. Things inmates ain't supposed to have. Always flanked by security, he never walked alone. His moves were calculated, just like Larry Hoover. Church was his cover. Large meetings were banned, but you could gather in church. So the BDs used Protestant services to pass messages. Orders from the Crowned King moved from the prison visiting room to the blocks. The gang took care of its own too. If you were a loyal member and ended up locked up, the BDs might slide you money for soap, smokes, or books. But if you turned your back on the nation, don't hold your hand out. You ain't getting a dime. Still, not every part of the BD empire runs smooth. They struggle to keep older members, so they run like franchises. One leader in good standing can open up shop somewhere new, like Milwaukee. It's all about making money from kids willing to do the dirty work. That's why the gang keeps a low profile. They ain't out here chasing fame or politics. Their game is quiet domination. Even the gang's own ex-members call it out. One said, "The BDs are not that deep. Their king is more like a dictator than an entrepreneur." But what really shows how deep this gang runs is what they write and preach. They got their own prayers, rules, and laws like a cult. In the BD prayer, they say, "Let us open up this prayer with a lot of love to King of all kings, King David, our crowned king, King Shorty." That's not just a name drop, that's worship. One document says, "I will accept no other teachings than that of our king or that which refers to the nation." That's rule number 6. It blocks out any outside religion or influence. Rule number 10 says, "I will abide by all commands given to me by the king and all appointed chiefs." They got 10 commandments too. One of them says, "Thou shalt love the nation with all thy heart, soul, and spirit." Another says, "Thou shalt teach the warriors of thy nation diligently and restore in them the determination of a true disciple." These kids memorize prayers, pledges, and rules like school lessons. One daily reminder reads, "I am what I am, a black disciple, and that I ain't, I will never be." Their symbols tell their story. The heart stands for love for the nation, the crown for King Shorty, the 6-pointed star for King David, the sword means life and death, the pitchforks show power and struggle, the horns are about pushing through obstacles, the devil's tail stands for the pain of black and third world people, and the flame is about self-help. All these signs are stitched into the gang's identity. They even have colors, red for bloodshed, black for black people, and blue for loyalty. As they say, true blue also represents the love we share, which is as deep as the deep blue sea. With all this structure, rules, and symbolism, the BD Nation looks more like a cult than a street gang. And that's what makes them dangerous. They don't just run drugs, they run minds. They preach loyalty like religion. Kids like Yummy were just soldiers in a war they didn't fully understand. Used, then tossed when things went wrong. We are stronger together, my love and yours forever. We are as one. King David said that it must be done. That's how they speak, that's how they lead, and that's how the streets stay chained to a name, Black Disciples. And just like that, the message spread from the block to the booth. The same hands that threw signs and bagged up dope were now gripping mics, turning pain into power and war stories into verses. Because for the Black Disciples, the streets weren't the end. The studio was just another battlefield. Now let's talk about the voices behind the noise. Rondo, Edie, and D-Rose. Rondo, Edie, and D-Rose, the BDs behind the mic and behind bars. You see, in the heart of Chicago's South Side, rap music and street life don't just run side by side, they bleed into each other. For the Black Disciples, music wasn't just about beats and bars. It was a voice, a warning, a street diary, and some of the biggest names to come out of this gang set, especially the infamous 600 set, weren't just rapping about the life, they were living it. Take Rondo Number 9, for example. Born Clint Massey in 1996, Rondo wasn't just another drill rapper trying to make it big, he was BD for real, repping the 600 set heavy. Known for his raw energy and loyalty to the block, Rondo ran with some of the top names in drill: Chief Keef, Lil Durk, Lil Reese, Fredo Santana, La Capone, and Tay 600. These weren't just studio links, these were street ties. They were all connected through the nation. But Rondo's rise didn't last long. He caught a murder case that shook the city. Cops say he was involved in the killing of Javen Boyd, and that got him slammed with a $2 million bond. Just like that, another BD rapper who was on the come-up ended up behind bars instead of on stage. The streets had claimed another one, and then there was Edai. Born on November 8, 1988, Edai wasn't just respected in the music game, he was feared in the streets. Also repping the 600 set of the Black Disciples, Edai made drill music that celebrated his set and went at his ops. His lyrics were blunt, gritty, and straight from the trenches. He didn't hold back. Edai's hood, also known as Brick City or De Block, was a known BD stronghold. He used his music to shout out fallen soldiers and active members. His mixtapes like So Serious, They Ain't Drillin', and How I'm Drillin' painted a raw picture of street life in Chicago. His video 600 blew up, featuring other 600 names like Rondo Number 9, S. Dot, and L.A. Capone. The video was more than just music, it was a roll call of BD muscle. But even Edai couldn't outrun the violence. On August 1st, 2021, he was shot and killed. Some say it was retaliation, others say it was just the cycle catching up. In drill culture, beefs don't die, they reload. Still, maybe the darkest name tied to the BD set was D-Rose. Abir Sardan, known in the streets as D-Rose, wasn't a rapper, but his name was legendary in drill lyrics. Chief Keef shouted him out, so did C-Die and Rondo Number 9. In the BD circle, D.Rose was known as a hitter, and in 2014 his name made headlines, not in a track but in court. He was just 17 when prosecutors say he pulled up on a group of boys walking near 61st and King Drive. He slid open the van door and opened fire. 4 shots hit 14-year-old Venzel Richardson, one hitting the back of his head. The boy ran into a gangway but collapsed and died there. It was a brutal killing and the streets felt it. Witnesses picked D.Rose out in a photo lineup. He was arrested 6 weeks later and later found guilty of first-degree murder. The court said he could face up to 45 years in prison. But while the system locked him up, the streets kept his name alive through songs. His name became legend, not just for what he did, but for what he represented. People even tried to tie D.Rose to the 2012 killing of rapper Lil Jojo, a known GD who was beefing with BD rappers like Chief Keef, Lil Durk, and Lil Reese. But those rumors fell apart. A Facebook post claimed D.Rose was behind it, but the owner later said he was hacked. In the end, D.Rose was never charged for Jojo's death. Still, the streets whispered, and the tension stayed high. What made the story even more painful was who Venzel Richardson was. He wasn't just another kid on the block. He was part of the MICVA Challenge, a program trying to pull youth into politics and away from the corners. His mentor, Jelani McEwen Torrance, said Venzel would walk his nephews home after school and then go work on community projects. These children live in extreme environments, he said. You can't categorize them by who they may be affiliated with. I want him to be remembered in a holistic way. But that's what the BD-GD war does. It swallows up rappers, soldiers, and even kids trying to stay out of it. From the outside, it might look like rap beefs, diss tracks, Instagram lives, Twitter threats, but for the BDs and 600 and other sets, these tracks were coded messages. They weren't just spitting bars, they were marking territory, calling out hits and honoring fallen homies. And the price for that loyalty? It's high. Some, like Rondo, are locked up. Some, like Edai, are buried. And others, like D.Rose, are still paying for the bullets they let off years ago. Do you think drill music gave the Black Disciples more power or just more problems? And can a gang this deep in the streets ever truly disappear? Or will a new generation just keep it going? Let us know what you think in the comments box below. And if you liked how we presented you this video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.